Welcome. Scott here. Here is a quick boss guide for the upcoming LUFENIA Plus event, Lure of the Lush Rafflessia raid. The featured units are Vayne from Final Fantasy XII, Cloud of Darkness from Final Fantasy III, Iroha from Final Fantasy XI and lastly, Strago from Final Fantasy VI. We will be fighting 2 Rafflessia, which have 12 million HP each. The turn requirement is 50. The HP requirements is 10,000. Before I continue further, here is a small disclaimer clause for the video. The guide is written based on the fight when it is originally released in the Japanese version. Please do note that it is possible that the boss fight mechanics might differ when the actual event is released in global. Firstly, let's go through the LUFENIA Plus Orb Conditions. The Orb Conditions for the fight requires you to break the target to uptick the orb. The orb will be activated once the boss HP threshold drops to 79% and it is non-cancelable. To maintain the orb, you need to inflict breaks on them. Doing so will uptick the orb by 4. The orb may sound easy on the surface, but it is actually quite tricky as the boss will gain 200% defense boost auras when the fight starts. Now let's proceed to the recommended units for handling the orb. Vayne and Cloud of Darkness are useful for upticking the orb with their unbreak and break mechanics. You can also bypass the defenses with defense ignoring abilities or instant break abilities. Examples of units that offers ignore defenses mechanics are Sabin, Strago, and Sid Reigns. Setzer and Core have Rainbow Brave capped utility, so they are viable options for this as well. Examples of units that offers instant break mechanics are Bartz, Trey, Gavrin, Noel, and Arden. Do note some of the recommended units might need additional auras to support them. Recommended calls abilities. To ensure that you are able to constantly break them, it is important to inflict defense down debuffs. Example of calls abilities that inflict defense down calls are Ferris, Jack, and Titus. As the turn count is a tight one, HP damage up debuff calls like Kareza May, Gavrin, and Ignis are useful. Although a bit trickier to use, aura type HP damage up calls like Queen and Kimari are also viable. Other than handling the orb, the fight has a tight turn requirements to watch out for. It is highly recommended to bring the units that offers a lot of free turn utility. Units like Ace that does a lot of off-turn damage via traps are very good options. Below are my units recommendations that you can consider. Of course, like other LUFENIA Plus events, it is important to bring a party support unit for their powerful auras to supplement the party's damage. It is probably easier to play the attack and counter game. Here are some damage mitigation units you can consider for the fight. For the final section of the boss fight overview, I will cover the key boss mechanics that you need to watch out for. Like all previous LUFENIA Plus fights, the boss will gain auras boost over the course of the fight when you go past the boss HP thresholds. The auras will activate at the following HP thresholds: start of the fight, 79% HP threshold, and lastly the 49% HP threshold. The boss will boost its defenses by 200% at the start of the fight. Do remember to bring defense down calls so you will have an easier time to break the boss. At full power, the boss gains up to 90% brave damage reductions and 80% brave gain reduction. Your brave damage will be nerfed severely if you don't use brave damage up calls or have the required party auras to overcome them. If you are using Iroha, she offers 20% brave consumption reduction, which will help a lot for the fight. She is also a viable call option, but it will require some setup to utilize it. The fight also involves an enrage mechanic. If you kill one of the bosses first, the surviving one will enrage with 50% stats boost. So try to target to kill them both at the same time where possible. When the player acts 12 times in a row, the turn rate of Rafflessia will be instant. Throughout the fight, you will actively see this message prompt. As the message states, if you take 12 consecutive actions before the boss acts, the boss will instantly warp their turns right after you triggered the condition. Actions include free turn abilities like calls and AA. This can be disastrous if the orb count is low. Avoid chaining both summon and burst phase back to back, otherwise you will most likely to trigger the mechanic. The fight really requires good pacing of your actions. Although Vayne is a synergy unit for the raid, it is a bit tricky to use him for fight as he will hog a lot of actions with his free turn mechanics. He is still viable though. You just need to constantly keep the 12 actions restriction in mind when using him. Due to the troublesome 12 turn requirements, a counter setup team is quite a popular option to use. An example of such team comp is Ace BT, Horum LD, and Setzer LD. The second key mechanic that you need to watch out for is the concentration mode. The boss will emit pollen type aura when they use concentration. Depending on the conditions, they will use Toxify or Toxify Plus on their next turn. If concentration mode is active and they get a turn, they will use Toxify Plus. It will cleanse all the debuffs and does a guaranteed AoE Brave plus HP attack with higher damage potencies. If you break their concentration, they will use Toxify, which only result them to cleanse non-frame debuffs and the AoE attack isn't guaranteed hit. To have the boss exiting from concentration mode, you need to accumulate 5 consecutive actions. Boss A will always enter into this mode at the start of the fight. Once Boss A exit out of the mode, Boss B will enter into the mode on the subsequent turn. The process will continue as the boss alternates their turns. Other than the concentration mechanic, these bosses don't have much noteworthy mechanics to talk about. Here is the list of the moves for your quick reference. Hopefully the video helps you. Good luck for the event. Thanks for watching the video. If you like the video, please do give it a like and subscribe.